This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Libyan death toll rises as battle for Tripoli intensifies. Sudanese army blocks attempts to disperse protesters. Kidnapped American tourist rescued unharmed. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta live in Nairobi. And tonight I am alongside my colleague Rama Nyang, who has our business headlines. Rama.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Shell plans to invest about $15 billion across oil and gas projects in Nigeria. And MTN is clashing with the Ugandan government over the mobile network's license renewal fee. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
Thank you, Rama. We start in Libya, where gun battles have continued even as the number of the dead rise to 25. The casualties include combatants and civilians. A spokesman from the Tripoli-based government health ministry says 80 more civilians have been wounded. Warplanes have also attacked Tripoli's only functioning airport, leading to its closure. This comes as Libya's national army, which is allied to General Khalifa Haftar, released a statement saying that 19 of its soldiers have been killed in the recent past. The United Nations says 2,800 civilians have been displaced since the fighting broke out. Well, European Union policy chief Federica Mogherini is also calling for a truce in Libya to allow peace talks. She is the latest in a string of international calls for a ceasefire. Here's StarTimes with more on that story.
As the violence in Libya continues to escalate, the international community is raising concerns. Speaking after meeting with the United Nations representative to Libya, Hassan Salameh, in Geneva, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said the warring factions must stop fighting and start talking.
I think the first message we need to pass united is the full implementation of the humanitarian truce to allow the civilians and the wounded to be evacuated from the city and to avoid any further military action and any further military escalation and the return to the political negotiations and the political track.
On April 7th, the United Nations called for a 2-hour truce to allow distribution of humanitarian aid and the evacuation of staff. But this call went unheeded. Now some nations are calling for funding to be cut off for Libya's eastern commander, Khalifa Haftar.
I think that the matter of Libya is a matter of utmost importance, and we must cut the violence as soon as possible, because the further the escalation goes, the more difficult it will be to regain the peace again. I know that there are vested interests in the area, but Libya's fragmentation will be also a security threat to Europe.
Haftar verfügt über sehr unterschiedliche. Eastern Libyan military commander Khalifa Haftar, who last week launched an advance on Tripoli, has very different sources of funding at his disposal. But it is certain that the political and military support comes from neighboring Egypt. And Haftar has what is fundamentally missing in Libya, namely a functioning military force.
Back in Libya, Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army announced it has moved into the southern outskirts of Tripoli. It also claimed that it had seized the international airport. If confirmed, then this will be the biggest threat to the Tripoli-based government of Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj. StarTimes, CGTN.
And now CGTN's Adel El-Marouki in Cairo is following the unfolding events in Libya. He now joins us with the latest. Adel, great to see you. And as always, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Adel, a warplane attacked Tripoli's only functioning airport on Monday as Eastern forces advanced on Libya's capital. What more can you tell us? What is the latest?
Well, there is an escalation ongoing, and as you said, what we've been seeing actually in the past few days is an attempt from the LNA, the Haftar-led forces, the Libyan National Army, to try to isolate or cut the communication or the transportation line into and out from Tripoli. They've been trying for the past 5 days to control checkpoints that lead to the main road that connects Tripoli to Tunisia, which is a long coastal sea. Now the airport comes to disrupt any flights ongoing in or out from Tripoli as well. The escalations are proceeding. It doesn't seem that anyone is backing. Both sides are determined Haftar to proceed to Tripoli and to evacuate the city from armed militants or armed militias. This is the general claim from the LNA forces. This has been confirmed even today with political movements ongoing. There is a phase of international support rallying from both parties. Faiz al-Sarraj and his cabinet have been meeting with European officials, trying to get support and condemn what they describe as the passive approach from Europe toward what is going on in Libya with the recent escalations. On the other hand, Aqila Salah Isa, the head of the Libyan parliament, which is the Eastern Bloc that is supporting an ally to Khalifa Haftar. The head of the Libyan parliament has been here in Cairo. He met Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait to confirm on the stance of the LNA. He claims that the LNA moves are constitutional and legal. He said that the LNA is moving in counter-terrorism efforts which abides to political agreements, prior political agreements. So he insists that they will proceed in that regard. And they also at the same time, and it's quite ironic, I mean, they're proceeding with their military power into Tripoli, yet they still confirm that they want to engage in political dialogue.
All right. Adele, the UN Secretary General has said that the UN is committed to facilitating a political solution and committed to supporting the Libyan people. What more can they do to help with the situation?
Well, there isn't really much to be done except they get a sort of a Security Council resolution which would encourage international powers to physically intervene somehow. Because what has been said globally, as you briefly mentioned as well, is that there are general condemnation, there are general calls for a ceasefire or a truce to the escalations that is going on. But this has not been seen to be affecting the situation on the ground. Clashes are still going, casualties are rising every day, and the death toll are increasing as the fight continues. And the closer Haftar forces get to Tripoli's core, or the core city and the headquarters of the Western government and the militias that supports it, or its GNA forces, it means that the more violent it will turn. So this is not a situation about phrases and condemnation anymore, because words will not stop the bloodshed that has started.
All right, Adel Marouki, thank you for your insights and analysis. Terrible situation there in Libya is certainly a story we will be following closely here on CGTN. Moving along, though, an escalation of fighting since 2014. Libya's political divisions have yielded 2 rival seats of power. Here's a look into what they control and how the battle for Tripoli is taking shape.
This is Libya. The country has a population of around 6.5 million people, but a vast land area with largely unguarded borders. It is deeply divided between the east and west, with both regions having an administration in charge. Terrorist groups such as ISIL are also believed to be exploiting the lawlessness. In the capital Tripoli, we have Prime Minister Faiz al-Sarraj's government. The government of national accord has built some fragile alliances in western regions, but has little leverage over Tripoli militias. In the Far East sits a parallel government under the control of Libyan National Army led by General Khalifa Haftar. So far, Haftar has seized all oil fields in the south and in the east of the country. It is thought he is already in control of 2/3 of the country. He now eyes the capital Tripoli, Libya's second largest city. Both Sarraj and Haftar are looking to control Libya and its wealth. Libya has Africa's largest oil reserves and is a key supplier of gas to Italy. The international community is pushing for elections. They insist a military intervention is not the solution.
I want to reassure the Libyan people that the UN won't abandon them and that we remain in Libya to work towards a political solution, a political settlement, silencing the sound of weapons and reaching peaceful political understanding between the various parties to the Libyan crisis, without resorting to the escalation that has worsened during the past few days.
Ignoring all the sacrifices of our youth and the suffering of their families who set heroic epics in the face of the terrorists and their supporters, and what we achieved by liberating Sirte, and what our forces, especially Al-Bonian and Al-Masous, who did it in a record time, and what our youth have organized in defending the homeland in other regions, he sends our sons to the fate of the unknown as fuel for war, where there are no winners, only losers, thus destroying the efforts of the Libyans and the international community to resolve things peacefully and meet for dialogue.
With tension building, Libyans can only hope that the UN attempt to unify the rival administrations will eventually be a success. Chamwono, CGTN.
The name of Commander Khalifa Haftar has been featuring prominently in the situation in Libya. Here's a short profile on the commander from the East, as many know him.
Khalifa Haftar rose to prominence in 2011 during the Libyan uprising that saw long-serving President Muammar Gaddafi overthrown. However, Haftar has been part of the North African nation's political and military fabric for decades. He was born around 1943 in the northeastern town of Ajabia. He's a career soldier, having attended different military colleges in Libya, Russia, and Egypt. In 1969, Haftar was part of the soldiers that backed the late Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in overthrowing King Idris of Libya. During the Yom Kippur War, which is also known as the October War, Haftar commanded the Libyan troops that were fighting with Egypt against Israel. Between 1978 and 1988, Khalifa Haftar was on the front lines yet again, as Libya battled Chad in what has come to be known as the Toyota War. During this war, he was part of the Libyan troops that were captured by Chad. In their captivity, Haftar and his fellow soldiers formed a movement to topple Muammar Gaddafi. Upon his release, he fled to the United States, where he settled in Virginia. Back in Libya, he was charged with treason in absentia and sentenced to death. He would acquire American citizenship and later return to Libya to support the revolution in 2011. He later fell out with the post-Gaddafi government formed under the General National Congress. In 2014, Haftar retreated to eastern Libya, where he has been leading a military onslaught against militias in the region. There have been efforts to reconcile his faction and the one under the UN-backed government of Prime Minister Fayez el-Sarraj. His latest quest to take Tripoli is a culmination of a series of peace talks between the two sides. The United Nations, France and the US are some of the nations and organizations that have been leading the peace talks. Many view Haftar as the renegade military commander who has fallen out with all of his chosen allies. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Still in Libya, the head of Parliament, Aguila Saleh, is in Cairo to discuss the recent developments. He is set to hold talks with Egyptian officials over the matter. He has already met Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Gate, with whom he confirmed the Libyan National Army's commitment to the upcoming political conference. Aguila, who is a key political ally to General Khalifa Haftar, also said the general is not violating any agreements, but rather confronting terrorism and fighting militias that control Tripoli.
If these militias move out of the capital, dialogue will be held. The Libyan National Army is committed to protecting the upcoming UN political conference.
Meanwhile, in Sudan, elements of the military protected protesters from security forces. Soldiers attempted to chase away pickup trucks firing tear gas at demonstrators. Sudan's information minister contradicted the report, stating that the security apparatus was working with positive energy and in harmony. Thousands of protesters are taking part in a sit-in outside the army headquarters. They are refusing to leave until President Omar al-Bashir steps down. At least 6 protesters were killed in Khartoum and 1 in Darfur during protests on Saturday and Sunday. According to the country's interior minister, 2,496 protesters were arrested in Khartoum. All right, we are joined by Dr. Hassan Kanenje. He is director of the Horn Institute based in Kenya and a doctor of international affairs and relations. Dr. Hassan, thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Let's dig straight into it. Sudanese soldiers intervene to protect demonstrators on Monday after security forces tried to break up a protest. What does this mean?
I think it's a recognition of the limits of violent repression against it. Mostly a group that is largely peaceful protesters. And I think we have seen this happen in Algeria recently, and I think it's being replicated at this stage in the Sudan.
All right, but small but sustained protests have been staged regularly since December. How long do you think they're going to continue? And most importantly, are they likely to succeed in your opinion?
The duration of these protests, I think, are going to depend on a number of things. Number one, whether the government in Khartoum is going to respond with people's calls for change, and whether at the same time the protesters are going to have the guts to continue, staying within the streets. In part because, in the light of what is happening, especially an apparent appearance of division within security services, if in fact the security services, some of them start siding with protesters, then I think you may see change in the Sudan very soon.
Okay, let me get your insight on this. How do you think the government is going to respond to the protests?
Unfortunately, governments, especially the ones that have been in power for a very long time, the only thing they know is use force. However, it's going to be worse for the government in Khartoum to perhaps move towards the direction of reform, or at least give them a sign, instead of having a state of emergency, perhaps leave the state of emergency and allow certain freedoms and some form of political organization. Because even in the absence, in the event of, let's say, the departure of the current president, al-Bashir, I think there's going to be a huge vacuum in Sudan, in part because for a very long time there was no room for political organization.
All right. Dr. Hassan Kanenje, so many questions, so little time, but thank you for breaking it down for us.
Thanks for having me.
You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more news coming your way after the break, including kidnapped American tourists rescued unharmed. Egypt's proposed constitutional changes will increase military control.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Across to Mozambique, where a massive effort between the government and various humanitarian agencies combating a cholera outbreak in and around the city of Beira is beginning to show signs of success. Nearly 60% of the population in affected areas have been vaccinated, while hundreds of suspected cases are receiving treatment in the aftermath of Cyclone Nta. CGTN's Robert Nagila reports from Beira.
It's been a busy couple of weeks at the Munyava Hospital, one of several cholera treatment centers in Beira, run by Médecins Sans Frontières.
We are treating cases based on suspected cholera, which is a very basic case definition of at least 3 watery diarrheas in the last 24 hours with or without vomiting.
On March 15th, Cyclone Nta hit Beira, a city of about 500,000 people. Behind it, a deadly storm surge flooded the city and surrounding areas, destroying Beira's water and sewerage system. The government says as of April 6th, 602 deaths have been recorded as a result of the cyclone, with 342 new cases of cholera reported, according to the United Nations.
But the good news is that the oral cholera vaccine campaign, the OCV campaign, has now reached 600,000 people, which is about 60% of the target population, which gives us what we call herd protection. So it gives us a basic level of immunization.
And it's here, at a nondescript room, in a corner of the airport at Beira, that a coordinated effort between the government and relief agencies is ongoing. Once an outbreak is reported, health workers, vaccines and medical equipment are dispatched to the affected area. Despite the huge numbers of people affected, officials are confident they're getting ahead of the outbreak. A major cleaning effort continues across the city as authorities race against time to provide access to clean water and sanitation.
We still have to be extremely careful about how we get clean water and hygiene into communities. Red Cross has been focused on that. We're also focused on opening oral rehydration points in communities that are heavily affected, so people have a place to go, they can be diagnosed, they can get early treatment.
Anywhere in Beira you go, the scars of Cyclone Nta are visible. However, authorities and aid workers believe that they have the cholera outbreak under control. But there is still many more challenges as the city struggles to rebuild. Bobat Nagila, CGTN, Beira, Mozambique.
The American tourist and driver who were kidnapped at Uganda's Queen Elizabeth National Park have been found unharmed. Endicott touched down in Kampala after Ugandan authorities secured her release. Isabel Nakiria reports from Kampala.
After a 5-day search, Kimberly Endicott and Guy Jean-Pierre Mirenge have been freed by their captors. They were reportedly found in the eastern side of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
There are many armed groups along that area, and from the foregoing, we have certain leads which could be indicating that there could be a network, even locally within Uganda, based on the information that we do have.
A combined force of Ugandan police, army and the rangers had been looking for the pair, with US FBI agents providing support for the operation. The tourists were on a game drive at the Queen Elizabeth National Park when their vehicle was ambushed by 4 unknown gunmen last Tuesday. It's reported the kidnappers later used one of their phones to ask for a ransom of $500,000.
This was a high-risk operation, and we had identified the hideout. The pressure was there of a last resort move-in, like I indicated in the statement, that there was an implicit threat of the use of force.
Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni tweeted saying security forces would deal with the criminals destabilizing the national parks. The Uganda Wildlife Authority says it was an isolated incident and the parks are safe for tourists. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
In about 2 weeks, Egypt will be holding a referendum on a series of constitutional changes. The nation will vote on amendments that will grant the military more authority to intervene in the government. Among the changes is to make the armed forces a supervisory body over politics in Egypt. More on this from our correspondent in Cairo, Adel El Marouki.
Constitutional amendments that Egyptians will soon vote on state that the Egyptian armed forces shall be the guardian of a civil state and the preserver of the people's rights. They are changes that constitutionalize the military role in Egyptian politics.
It's a role that the armed forces already plays and has played in the January 25th and June 30th revolutions. It has sided with the people. We believe that this role must be constitutionalized so that if Egypt faces the same situation, no international or local voices can dare accuse the military of a coup or constitutional violations.
Parliament also recommends that no defense minister shall be appointed without the approval of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces. It's the first time the president's choice for the military chief will be tied.
The defense minister is a very sensitive position. To have a person that enjoys the approval of the military council and the top generals is a step towards stability for that position. It is also protection for the nation if a president tries to enforce a defense minister that is incapable of leading or has ideologies that contradict our national security. It's not taking away the president's power, rather creating harmony between him and the army.
The suggested amendments also subject civilians to military trials only in crimes that include military properties or personnel on duty.
While the recommended amendments recognize the military's historic role during the 2011 and 2013 uprisings when it sided with the popular demand to remove the president, critics fear that it may open room for further political engagement. And anyway, by the end of this month, the majority vote will determine the fate of these amendments. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Rwandan President Paul Kagame has said he is not waiting on France to apologize for its role in the 1994 genocide. This follows French President Emmanuel Macron appointing a commission to investigate France's role in the genocide. Rwanda has long accused France of playing a role in the genocide through its support of the Hutu government.
People have asked us whether what we need from France or from anybody has been an apology. And our answer has always been no. You can't ask people to apologize or keep asking them to apologize or tell them how to apologize. Then that, after all, kills the whole meaning of an apology.
In Somalia, the Italian Minister of Defense, Elisabetta Trenta, has paid a surprise visit to Somalia accompanied by a high-level delegation. Received by her Somali counterpart, Hassan Mohammed Ali, the two sides held talks on military cooperation. Trenta's visit comes days after the Somali government summoned defense officials regarding the country's deteriorating security situation. The Italian government has recently established a presence in Mogadishu.
We have welcomed Mrs. Elisabetta Trenta, the Italian Minister of Defense, the Chief of Defense Staff, and other delegates she brought to the Somali capital. We discussed the long-standing bilateral relationship between our two countries. We also talked about the special relationship between Italy's Defense Ministry and that of the Federal Republic of Somalia.
Universal health coverage is the World Health Organization's focus for this year's World Health Day. Experts say access to basic primary health care is not only a basic human right, but also key to eliminating global inequalities. In South Africa, quality health care is one of the issues informing the upcoming general elections. Now, CGTN's Yulisa Njamela has more. Let's take a look.
South Africa's healthcare system is in urgent need of major reforms. Even government has on a number of occasions admitted to this.
The public health system in this country has been described as broken. Facilities are overburdened and understaffed.
The health ministry believes that unless the public and private healthcare system is massively reorganized, healthcare provision in this country will continue to suffer. With the national general elections just a month away, the health issue is top of politicians' lists of topics as they campaign to win the elections. The governing African National Congress wants to overhaul the health system. The party wants government to implement a universal health coverage known as NHI. NHI is a financing system that is designed to pool funds to provide access to quality, affordable health services for all South Africans, irrespective of their socio-economic conditions.
It is unacceptable that access to healthcare services remains dependent on a person's social and economic circumstances, with poor people still struggling to access quality, reliable care. The introduction of the national health insurance will correct this injustice. The journey to universal health care has to start with deliberate efforts to address the immediate crisis in the public health system, to tackle such issues as corruption, poor financial management, human resource planning, training, and maintenance of equipment and infrastructure.
Opposition parties are not convinced, though. They criticize the governing party for failing to fix the health system in 25 years of being in power, and they believe they have a better plan. The Democratic Alliance is the country's biggest opposition party. The DA governs in one of South Africa's provinces, the Western Cape.
Where the DA governs, more people get quality health care because we build world-class hospitals in places like Khayelitsha. Today, they've got incredible hospitals.
Health system in South Africa, it will.
Health system in South Africa is broken. When our people go to these hospitals, it's equal to going to a mortuary. Let's vote for the EFF to correct the public health care.
We want to put more resources in the public health care.
Well, in just over a month, it will be clear which party triumphs at the polls and whether they will, in fact, keep their promise of delivering affordable quality health care for all South Africans. You listen to Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
All right, this is Africa Live on CGTN. Let's go to Rama Young, who has the business headlines. Rama.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business. Shell plans to invest about $15 billion across 24 oil and gas projects in Nigeria. And MTN is clashing with the Ugandan government over the mobile network's license renewal fees. We'll explore why next.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Nta.
Hello, Naro.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. Welcome back. Let's start in Nigeria. The Shell Petroleum Development Company plans to invest about $15 billion across 24 oil and gas projects in Nigeria. The managing director says that the company has surpassed a 70% development target to achieve its production benchmark. He adds that the ongoing projects will generate thousands of jobs and provide a sustainable source of income. The Ohaji gas plant project in Asa North and Imo State is about to generate about 1,200 megawatts of power and offer supply of natural gas to over 1.2 million households. Its output is estimated at 300 million standard cubic feet per day. That ideally should supply some 70% of the domestic market. Further south, Zimbabwe plans to complete valuations of land previously owned by former white commercial farmers by the end of May. Now, the government over there says it's ready to pay over $12 million as interim compensation to the settlers who were displaced during the fast-track land reform program. Going back to the year 2000, the state seized farms, often violently, belonging to white farmers and transferred ownership to black farmers in an effort to mitigate long colonial injustices. It is the first step in a slow reform process which the government hopes will lead to the eventual lifting of US sanctions on Zimbabwe. Over in the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia's headline inflation hit 11.2% in the year to March. The Statistics Bureau over there says year-on-year inflation is 10.9% the month before in February. The rise is mainly due to an increase in the price of cereals and non-food items like house rent and fuel, among others. Even so, Ethiopia is in the lead as the fastest growing economy in Africa, with forecast GDP growth of 8.2% this year. That's attributed to services and industrial development as well as strong FDI inflows, all of which are combining to boost economic output. Up north, Egypt's latest figures show a drop of $1 billion in its year-on-year foreign direct investment flows. It's an alarming amount for officials who've been hoping for an increase in FDI in order to support the country's future economic growth. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim looking at the numbers.
In spite of the aggressive economic reforms, Egypt remains behind schedule on manufacturing and exports.
Egypt is not an industrial country. Therefore, we are importers of about 70% of all our needs, which is a major drain on our foreign currency resources, and at the same time our exports are very, very small. Industry is sustainable, is long-term, provides jobs, increases the per capita, increases the GDP.
Experts believe Egypt has the strong base with a unique location, large market, young population and relatively skilled labor force.
What we need is actually very little. It's clarity, transparency and rule of law.
The government is launching a plan to attract foreign investors to establish industries here.
We are focusing on providing new facilities for investors, tax incentives, and well as cutting red tape to attract investors back.
Officials are also preparing for new IPOs on the medium term to revitalize the market.
We have a very comprehensive plan for restructuring loss-making companies and increasing and enhancing sectors like textile, like insurance, like transport and logistics. So we have specific details for almost 45 companies of our portfolio.
According to officials, the government has attracted $8 billion in 2018. It is hoping to target an increase of 20% by the end of 2020 and to reach $12 billion of foreign direct investments by the end of 2021. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Let's move on to Uganda, shall we? MTN's 10-year operating license that has been offered by the Ugandan Communications Commission has been called into question. Now, this comes after the network regulator charged a company $118 million compared to the $100 million that had been proposed by the cabinet. Now, according to the regulator, the fee was reached based on the projected annual gross revenue. It adds that MTN has an option of renewing its license for 15 years at a cost of $150 million. The company's license expired in October 2018 after a 20-year run. Now, the back and forth negotiations between the regulator and the company has resulted in a temporary renewal that's bound to expire in May. The Commission recently faced heavy criticism from President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni for offering a 10-year license at $58 million. MTN Uganda is expected to invest some $200 million in order to meet the conditions of a new national broadband policy. China's largest infrastructure project in Mozambique is the Maputo-Katembe Bridge, and it's offered a bit of a boost to the economy and bilateral trade. The longest twin-tower suspension bridge in Africa hovers above the Maputo Bay with a main span of some 680 meters. Here are more details on that story.
The 3-kilometer-long bridge connects the capital of Maputo on the northern bank with the suburb of Katembe on the southern bank. This local resident transports goods from the northern bank to the southern. Before the construction, it took him 2 to 3 hours by ferry and cost him $15. But now it only takes him several minutes on the road for only $5. The bridge has cut travel time from 3 to 6 hours to 1.5 hours between Maputo and Mozambique to South Africa's Kosi Bay. The convenience now facilitates a free flow of goods and passengers across Mozambique and South Africa, boosting bilateral trade and also sprucing up tourist resorts in southern Mozambique.
Yeah, I'm buying the food in South Africa. I'm going to Maputo. Before, I was taking maybe 5 hours to reach border. It was long queue and then the road was bad. But now, if you need to go to Boani, go is easy.
The construction of the Maputo Bridge and Link Roads project started in June 2014. Its estimated cost is $785.8 million, with 95% of the funding provided by China through preferential and buyer's loans. This has helped generate 3,800 jobs for the locals and provided skills training opportunities for thousands of employees. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Digital experts and business leaders are in Tunis for the third edition of the Tunisia Digital Summit. Now, the event featured a digital employment center to help companies identify and recruit candidates and skills across the digital economy. CGTN's Richard Nta was there.
Over 1,000 business leaders, policymakers, start-uppers, students and new technology specialists attended the third edition of Tunisia Digital Summit 2019. Experts have said that Tunisia is one of the most dynamic countries on the African continent in the field of digital technology.
The objective of this event is to highlight the successful experiences of young Tunisians in the digital field who've succeeded thanks to the support policies conducted by universities, incubators, training centers and other support and funding structures.
This event gave an in-depth look at major technological trends such as cognitive computing, blockchain, Internet of Things, intelligent cloud, cybersecurity, and many other topics.
In a vertical and sectoral approach, Tunisian Digital Summit sheds light on major impacts of transformation in retail, banking, creative industry, digital trade, and Industry 4.0 through workshops dedicated and led by business experts.
The Tunisian government has announced several measures to boost investment in the digital sector.
E-health, social security and support structures for citizens, as well many administrative procedures, will be digitized thanks to Tunisian competences. It is possible to succeed in Tunisia, especially in the digital sector.
The Open Innovation Challenge 48-hour hackathon was organized at TDS 2019 on the theme Artificial Intelligence in Fraud Detection and Verification of Auto Repair Costs. Tunisian Prime Minister says public and private enterprises, civil society, as well as citizens should work together to achieve digital transformation. He says it will improve competitiveness of Tunisian companies in the African and global markets. Adhan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And finally, China's Belt and Road Plan is mainly associated with infrastructure, but there's also a bit of an agricultural component to it. Farmers and researchers in China have been working with their counterparts in member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. CGTN's reporter Richard Nta shows us how this collaboration is sowing the seeds for the future.
Collecting stamens from a mango tree and using them to pollinate another type of mango tree, the hybridization is expected to yield high-quality fruit. This is Kwan Ha-tai Tanongji's second month in China. Originally from Thailand, she came here under China's plan to introduce 100 talented researchers into South China's Guangxi.
I like it here. China has a lot of new technology that differs from what we have in Thailand. Here I can combine the different technologies used in both countries, and I can bring what I learned here back to Thailand.
Zhou Junan, a Chinese mango expert, visited Thailand as a scholar for a year. He helped bring Tanongji to China and hoped for some good collaboration.
We used to go for week-long visits. Now the 6 to 12-month visits help us gain a well-rounded understanding of each other's studies objectively.
Guangxi initiated the plan of recruiting ASEAN experts in 2017. 100 experts are expected to work in the region by next year.
Our institute has been collaborating with over 20 nations under the Belt and Road Initiative, including the ASEAN countries. About 100 visiting scholars have come for cooperation or communication on about 80 projects so far. The funding for international cooperation is over $7 million US.
The talent scouting scheme is an open platform not only limited to ASEAN countries. Experts with recognizable expertise can all find their places in the country. China is a big importer of sugar. Imports of it increased by more than 20% last year. Guangxi, one of China's top sugarcane producing regions, is trying to turn the tide.
China could take a lead in helping Southeast Asian countries. To make things better for China and Southeast Asian countries, what is required is we ourselves got to improve our systems and technologies.
China has been ASEAN's biggest trading partner for 9 consecutive years. Trade volume jumped over 14% in 2018. The two-way collaboration is expected to better connect China to countries outside ASEAN as well.
Their agricultural universities and institutions are all well connected with other countries worldwide.
China's agricultural communication with Southeast Asian nations dates back to the 1980s. Now new projects are burgeoning under the Belt and Road Initiative, with more facilitating policies being put into action. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Nanning, Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region.
Well, over there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be looking at a little more detailed Zimbabwe's land reform process. Of course, as just mentioned, $12 million plus in interim compensation to be paid out to white farmers. But how is this going to be funded, and what's a long-term plan? Some answers coming your way live from Harare at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Richard.
Thank you so much, Rama. So many cool and remarkable stories coming your way here on Africa Live. Check out this next story. Athletes race for charity at South Africa's Cape Mountain.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to South Africa now, where the world-famous Table Mountain that is situated in Cape Town was a scene of a very unique race. Nearly 200 athletes spent most of Saturday walking or running up the mountain to raise funds for charity. Here's Renee Delcarme with that story.
2, 1, go!
The Cableway Charity Challenge was started by a handful of committed, caring Capetonians wanting to give back to their city. Athletes run or walk a difficult 5.5-kilometer route to the top of the mountain, about 1,000 meters above sea level. They then descend with the Table Mountain cable car before summiting the mountain yet again.
Cableway Charity Challenge is an endurance event for 199 athletes to see how many times they can climb the mountain in one day. So this is our 11th year of the event. We've raised over 8.5 million rand in total, but 1.1 million rand today should be coming in.
There's tough competition every year to see who can complete the most laps up the mountain between sunrise and sunset. But organizers say every runner and walker tackling this grueling circuit is a winner because they're all helping to make a difference in someone's life.
Every single entrant of this event is a hero. They go out there and they raise money for charity. We have nominated charities that we choose every year, and we've done some amazing educational work for kids over the years, and we get such positive feedback that every year we just want to do it again.
We were very proud a few years ago when we were offered the title sponsorship, because it means so much in terms of what we put the athletes through, and that literally every drop of sweat means something in rand value to the charities that is supported through this initiative. And we will continue to support this.
And it's always a privilege and honor to do this because I do it every year. And what I saw, like a bunch of amazing people running for charity and animals and also plants, like the nature is beautiful. So it felt so good. It's for good cause.
Oh, it's a perfect day. Perfect. It's beautiful. So excited about that.
Most competitors completed the trail in 2 hours, with top athletes finishing in about an hour. This year, the prize for the fastest lap was won by a professional trail runner who ran the route in 36 minutes and 8 seconds. The same runner who once ran up Table Mountain a record 12 times in one day. Renedal Calm, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Amazing story there. In Nigeria, more than 11,000 young people have received startup kits. This is after completing government-sponsored skills development training. Nigeria has a record 26 million unemployed people, and the government is exploring ways to change this. Let's take a look at this story.
Thousands of youth gathered in the Nigerian capital Abuja on Thursday. They are beneficiaries of the government-sponsored Industrial Training Fund, ITF, since its inception in 2016. The scheme, which occurs annually, has empowered over 150,000 Nigerians with skills for employability and entrepreneurship. More than 90% of the previous graduates have gone on to set up businesses and are recording success and growth. In his opening speech, the Director General of the ITF, Joseph Ari, said the scheme seeks to reduce the current state of unemployment in the country.
Our commitment to skills acquisition is based on the fact that it is the most sustainable solution to combating unemployment, reducing poverty and youth restiveness in the country. It is an incontrovertible fact that any society that neglects the development of its human capital is bound to retrogress in terms of growth and development.
Representing the Vice President, the Secretary to the Nigerian government, Boss Mustafa, said that the government is sparing no cost in ensuring that small businesses are adequately encouraged.
I know for 2 consecutive budgeting years, 500 billion is the amount of money that has been appropriated in each budgeting year of the 2 consecutive years. 500 billion is what has been appropriated, all geared towards social intervention, to provide for those that are in need and also equip the youthful population for national development.
Small and medium-scale enterprises in Nigeria contribute almost half of the nation's gross domestic product. The government is paying more attention to such businesses in order to further boost the economy. In addition to being trained and equipped with business management skills, the beneficiaries are being presented with startup kits to help kickstart their businesses in various fields. Cameras, ovens, tile cutting tools are all part of the kits being given to them. They express their gratitude to the government and already hope for a brighter future in business.
So I see myself in the entertainment world. I see myself improving, using my camera to improve my makeup business too. Actually very nice. So that's a lot.
After the training, the small and medium enterprises came for a training also on how to enterprise. They promised us that if we can get up a place, they will assist us in getting a small loan.
Nigeria has a record 26 million unemployed citizens. As part of its election promises, President Buhari's government is exploring various ways of tackling unemployment, and many here believe that industrial skills development trainings such as these will help reduce the figure. Mahemutwa, CGTN.
And we're not done just yet. We've got to dig into our sports news, so let's talk a bit of football. World Cup-bound Cameroonian women's football team suffered their first defeat in their preparations for the World Cup in the Wuhan football tournament in China after edging out Croatia